Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I have a video for you about output standards in VR, because right now there are none, and as a content creator this makes my life very hard, so I'm calling upon any VR developer, any VR platform, any VR publisher, anybody that works in the VR industry, content creators and anybody, to share this video because we need a single output standard. And I think that we need this because beautiful, glorious games like Robo Recall that you're watching right now look downright awful when I actually record them. My actual raw output from the game looks something like this. Why in the world is my game running not in 16:9, not in 4:3, but in a strange special resolution on left eye only and a giant scoreboard on the right hand side? I've seen a lot of strange things when it comes to VR games, but I don't know why we have the gigantic scoreboard. Well, I kind of do, and we'll talk about it later, but for a massive first-party Oculus game that thrives on sharing and gameplay, this seems very, very strange to me. And I feel that things like this ultimately hurt the viability and shareability of VR games. Sometimes when I'm playing in virtual reality, I get lucky and I get a combined 16:9 output of both eyes that's perfectly normal. This is very rare, and most of the time that requires the game to run a second game state with a normal camera, but you know, I'm usually happy enough if I get just the left eye only at 16:9, kind of like when I'm playing the Unspoken here. It looks close enough to normal capture, even if the perspective is a little bit off. And a random thought I had is that why is it almost every single time you're capturing a VR game, it's going to be left eye only, when about 70% of the human population is right eye dominant, so they're not even going to be looking and focusing on the things that you look at with the left eye. It would make much more sense to use the right eye, because that's the thing that most players are going to be looking at when they record, and it'll obviously be the thing that most people look at when they're watching that playback video. However, oftentimes, I am not even fortunate enough to get the left eye only thing. I get the strange, weird dual eye thing like the roller coaster game that my mother played. Now this is kind of phasing out, but a lot of games still do it. And when games do it, especially big, fun, beautiful games, it ends up looking ugly as sin by the time I'm editing it and making it presentable looking. Like, I can only crop that eye box and stretch it out and do the aspect ratios and up the scaling so much before it looks downright ugly. And if you thought this weird dual eye thing is problematic, you should see some of the other things. I've seen games run in 4:3 square mode like this. I've seen them run in vertical cell phone capture mode kind of like this. I've seen them run in mini square mode showing only the center of what your eye is looking at like this. And a lot of games I've seen just not have a capture screen at all. They just don't output anything, so there's no way to capture or share it without getting some sort of direct feed from the Oculus through HDMI, which is a huge pain in the butt, and I promise you that you don't want to do that. I think that the VR industry as a whole needs to come together and set a standard on how to output gameplay for capture. This is extremely important because social sharing is extremely important for the VR experience, especially because skepticism for virtual reality gaming and as a platform is already very, very high. Gamers by their nature are a skeptical lot. They distrust VR, they see it as a novelty, as a toy, as a temporary thing, as not lasting, and it looks especially more like a toy or a novelty when you can't even share the gameplay from it properly. Strange outputs like the dual eye mode or the 4:3 mode always make your game look very bad, because all the footage from the game itself looks very, very bad. Strange outputs discourage content creators from even trying to capture your game because it takes a ton more work, and their quality is going to be lower than that of making a comparable video on a traditional video game. It limits the possibilities of VR as a party game in that VR is kind of thought of as a solo experience, but I've been with a lot of people that like to do it as novelty. Hey man, play this scary game with me. Hey dude, can you check this thing out with me? Or hey, I want to show you something in VR. Well, especially if you're not even outputting properly, you can't share that experience with the other people in the room. They don't get to laugh with you and have fun with you. And even if they can do it, it looks kind of ugly. Finally, I think it makes it damn hard for developers to make decent looking gameplay trailers. They almost always use just cutscenes from the game rendered in first person or a different sort of output instead of just capturing actual raw gameplay of people playing, because there's no way to do that and make it look good. I think that changing to a single set standard whatever it may be, will greatly alleviate all of these issues and help further VR as a platform in general. Personally, I would prefer the game to run a second instance and have a combined 16:9 output with a normal camera, but I realize that's extremely taxing on computers. That's like a third time you have to render the game. It's once for each eye and then once for the other camera, and most people's rigs aren't going to be able to do that. So I personally would settle for the 16:9 left eye or right eye or whatever by eye camera that you're going to get, and that would be fine. I can absolutely work with that. But this strange 4:3, the vertical video, the double eye thing, the no capture screen, the little squares, all those need to go away. I never want to see those again, and I feel that this push is most likely going to have to come from the platform creators themselves, from the hardware creators like Oculus, like Vive, like Samsung, or PlayStation VR. Well, PlayStation VR actually was a step ahead of the others and already did this. Now, PSVR is kind of dogged on as being the lower end of the VR helmets for tracking and price and quality, resolution, all that, but PSVR already has a perfect set standard for outputting, and it's not exactly 16:9, but every single game is exactly the same, and it's pretty close to YouTube quality, so that makes it very easy to share with other people. I wish the other game companies would get together and force a standard on developers to do this that would make sharing so much easier. I encourage any VR content creator, any VR dev, or any platform developer that just happens to find this video to share it around, talk about it in the office, and maybe come up with a solution. And for everybody else, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.